So I'm a filmmaker. Been doing film since I was 9 years old. That's whenever I first made the decision to do what I wanted to do. I've never gone to college for this. I've never gone back and forth on what should I do. It was, first grade. I saw a green screen at work, and I captured the idea of telling stories. And I couldn't believe that you could use film to be able to communicate stories to people. And so it started when I was little. And again, never went to college for it. Never had any doubts about it. But I went and I made what I call my business plan. I started a company with some friends when I was 17 years old, and shortly after, my friends went off to college and pretty much left me to run the business. And I grew the business we made about $250,000 a year in our company. And that was all I did, was very self-taught. Also I want to say I am married. I like to say that I'm a husband and I'm a father, I'm a Christ follower, and least of all, I'm a filmmaker. Been married for 6.5 years. We have 5 kids. Yes, we know what causes it, and our hands are full. But I can't think of anything better to fill our hands with than little people that are just eager to learn about Christ, and people that you can share the gospel with each and every day. So, funny story of how our company got started. There was a guy at our church that had worked for a big international Japanese company. And he was saying that they had a video a training video that their company was going to do, and they had a company that had a bid for $12,000. And I spoke up and I said, "Hey, we'll do it for 10." And at this point, the largest job I had ever had was a $600 wedding. And so, I had no idea what we were getting into. And he came back the next week at church and he said we had the job. And, I didn't even go in for a meeting. We never interviewed the company. He went and spoke for us. And so we now had a $10,000 job. We had this little kind of, backyard company that we had made. And so we had 1 month to come up with a company name, come up with T-shirts and logos, buy all of our equipment. So let's just say all of that money we spent before the job even started, and we worked for free. So it was kind of like a debt-free loan that we had for our company, except, of course, we had to deliver a good product. We had done videos for a while, so we knew our way around kind of delivering that. But it's a video that no one's ever going to see other than that company. We're not very proud of it. It wasn't that good, but they liked it. We earned our money, and 13 years later, I still have some of that same equipment from that first job. And so that was definitely God kind of starting that for us. But I talked about my business plan that I started, and I had heard an interview from Mel Gibson on The Passion of the Christ when that came out. And he said that he put about $27 million of the $30 million to make that movie of his own money to get it done. And he said the only way that he could have gotten that movie done was based on the career and the success that he had. And so I really grabbed onto that, and I said, okay, if that's the way that it is in the industry, making Christian films, going against Hollywood and not having movies that I wouldn't want my family to watch and things, I said, okay, I need to be successful, and I need to create this successful career before I can go and do what the Lord wants me to do. And so I made my plan, but I forgot to ask the Lord, is this what you want me to do? And so I kind of built my stepping stones, and instead of doing the Lord's work and saying, Lord, is this what you want me to do, all the way down, I said, this is what I'm going to do, Lord, so I can then go and do what you've created me for. So this went on for about 10 years in our production company, and we did music videos, we did commercials, we did all sorts of fun stuff where you get fun toys to play with, and it was just, it was a good learning experience, but I wasn't fulfilled in what I was doing. Going home and thinking about just, my work is convincing people to buy stuff that they don't need, and I'm trying to make that look flashy and still somehow, this is what the Lord has called me to do. It just didn't feel right. And so I'd become so obsessed with making films and making videos that after I got married, I would even go and spend the nights at the office because I had to get this video done for the client. I had to do it right. And I don't even remember the first year of my marriage. I was just so obsessed with my work, but I can tell you what videos I worked on during that time. And so that was kind of the start of my wake-up call in my career and in my calling. And after getting married and having kids, we started learning about birth control, and we started doing research on the topic, and we asked ourselves the question, what does the Bible say about this? Because we had always grown up where you make your plan, you wait 4 or 5 years, and then you have kids, and God pointed us to the scriptures, and we said, is this even the Lord's plan with our life? And so kind of long story short there, we ended up kind of deciding that we need to make a theological and historical film to communicate the biblical position there. And so that was our first project that was kind of unique to everything else that we had been doing. And And so what happened after that is, we sent the film to film festivals. We started winning film festivals. We started getting requests to travel around the world to do film panels. We ended up going to Australia. We ended up having all this success with this film that, for me, I thought seemed impossible. 3 guys making a documentary about birth control, like that's not going to be successful. But what I realized is that God said, make your films for me, and I can do whatever I want to do with or without your success. And he showed me that, that was a film that was outside of our audience. It wasn't even in the corporate client, regional kind of clients that we were targeting. And so that's when I realized that I need to make God my audience for what I do. And so we were at a film festival in which we had placed very well for this film, and they had an after party. And before I tell you what went on there, let me put a thought in your mind. Whenever you guys meet people for the first time, after you guys say your name, what's the first thing that you usually say? You usually ask, "What do you do?" So hold on to that thought. So we were at this after party, and there was a pastor that was talking to an artist. And now I'm going to insert myself into this conversation because that's how I heard it when I was there. And so whatever you do, whatever that question is, the way that you answer that, kind of put yourself into this question. So here's what the pastor said. He said, God didn't create you to be a filmmaker. And I said, what? He said, God created you to glorify him. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, if God took away your sight, if God took away your hands, could you still fulfill your purpose? I said, yes, I could. And that's when I knew that my creative compelling had become an idol in my life. And so I realized that I had been living my career rather than living out my calling. And so slowly, throughout time, I did what any of you guys would probably do. I resigned from my job. Maybe you guys wouldn't do that, but after much thought, I realized that I had built this company wrong. I had been leading the company wrong, and I knew that I needed to change it from this is what I do and this is my identity, and I needed to move my identity to Christ and be willing to give it up if God wanted me to do something else. I had to be okay with that question. If I wake up in the morning and I can't see, if I can't use my hands, I'm not purposeless. I'm not done with my life. I can still glorify God with what he has. So imagine burning down your house, making it out with just your keys and your family and your car. That's what it was like to resign from this job, because it was the only job I'd ever known. I had done it for 10 years, never worked a job anywhere else, and I walked away. So that was in 2013. So fast forward to 2014. Slowly, I started to not be able to find work. And I think that's the big question for all of us, is if I jump out and do this creative thing, how am I going to provide? How am I going to pay the bills? At that point, we had, I don't know how many kids we had at that point. They all blur together. We had a good bit of kids at that point. I guess we had 4. So that's always the question of, you don't want to do something stupid and risk your children and risk your family. But starting in the summer of 2014, I could just not find any work. And at the same time, all the clients had, even the ones that I wanted to still work with after I resigned from my company, the churches and ministry-related clients that I had, they just stopped calling. And God kind of completely shut the door in that chapter of my life. And the real prayer that I had was that I could work on only faith-based projects and faith-based films, specifically feature films, and be able to share the gospel through those films. But I could not find any work. And one of the projects that we worked on through the birth control project was this book called Outlawed, and it's based on Anthony Comstock and how he fought and won the purity of the nation. He's basically the most successful Christian reformer that we've ever seen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, but everything that Margaret Sanger did in her career was to tear down the laws that he put into place. Roe versus Wade was the last of the birth control and abortion laws that he had put into place. And through that, it basically lasted about 100 years. So he kind of became my hero. We reprinted his book that was written in the 1800s. And one thing that stuck out to me in the book was something that his mother said to him. So let me read a little bit here. It says, Mr. Comstock, who had fought during these 40 years in the sight of God and in the power of God, found guidance and strength in 3 points that his mother gave him, long before he had thought of being commissioned in his lifelong conflict with the powers of evil. This was her counsel. Before every effort, prayer. Over all prayer, thy will be done. After prayer, put yourself in the way of receiving the answer. Be up and doing. So I realized that the prayers that I had, I needed to be up and doing. I needed to be in the way of answering my prayers. I couldn't just say a prayer and then sit there and wait for God to do everything for me. And so shortly after that, I got an email for a prayer meeting from the Kendrick brothers. They were coming to town to do War Room, and they were inviting pastors to come and pray over the production. And I said, well, I'm not a pastor. I don't think I can sneak in, so I'll pass on this. And then I got an email from my pastor, and he said, I signed you up, you're coming with me, let's go tomorrow. So we went to this prayer meeting, and I got there, and I said, this would be fantastic to work on this film. Not just to work on a film, but I could really sense this idea of being under humble leadership and being under men who have done it the right way and not the wrong way. And when I got there, all the crew spots were filled. And they said they didn't have anything else, but send in your application, yada, yada, yada. So I realized and remembered what I had read in that book about being in the way of answering my own prayers. And so I said, let's see what I can do here to help if this is really what God wants me to do. So I set up meetings. I went home and I rewatched all the Kendrick brothers films. I don't know if you guys have seen Facing the Giants, but there's a scene in there where the man comes to him in the hallway and tells a story about the 2 farmers that pray for the crops to grow. And he said, the one that is ready for his prayers to be answered prepares for rain. And so I grabbed onto that phrase that I need to prepare for rain. If I want God to do this, if I want to work on films and fulfill my calling through films, I need to prepare for that to happen. And again, I could still not find work from this summer on. Everything was just drying up. So I set up meetings and worked my way in and met with the locations guy. And one thing that Stephen Kendrick had said at the prayer meeting, was specific prayers get specific answers. So I also started fine-tuning my prayers to ask specifically, not just say, Lord, please let something work out, or let me follow my dreams, but specifically, I would love to work on this film. I would love to be in a position where I could be under their leadership. And so a couple of days later after these meetings, or it was actually 3 weeks later, no phone calls, no nothing, I get a phone call from a producer on the film. And he said there's only one position left on the film, and it's in the locations department. And if you guys aren't familiar with how films work, locations is the bottom of the totem pole. It's kind of the janitor position. You get there, you unlock, you make sure that if there's places that crew isn't supposed to go, it's all marked off, those types of things. You're the last one to leave. So you're doing like 14, 15-hour days every single day, 6 days a week. And they said, we want somebody who will embrace this position and not sneak into this and try to move their way up. And I believed that this was God's answer of saying, you know, you've been in the high position, you've traveled the world, you've won these awards. I'm going to put you at the bottom, and I'm going to let you be under humble leadership to see how to do it the right way. And so I embraced it, and I said, I will gladly do this, Lord, if this is the step that I need to take in my journey. So the next day, the producer called back, and he said, the position's not available anymore. So I said, Lord, what does this mean? I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. And then he said, but I have somebody on the phone who wants to talk to you. So there was a pause, and then Stephen Kendrick comes on the phone. And he said, have you ever done craft services? And I said, that's a very interesting question. I was like, well, we have on some of the music videos that we've done, but like, why would he want me to do craft services on a big feature film? And so I kind of went along with it, and he just started laughing, and he said, I don't need you for craft services. He said, the behind-the-scenes position has opened up, and we want to offer you to do behind-the-scenes on the film. And so I believe that that was a test, and that God rewarded my faithfulness in that situation, and he put me in the best possible position that I could be in to answer my specific prayer, which was I wanted to be under humble leadership. And behind the scenes is where they give you a camera, and you get to go stand as close to anybody you want to and just film what they're doing. So I have, 6 weeks of footage of just learning from these men and how they ran a movie set, how they brought Christ into everything that they did. And I really saw for the first time what it meant to combine my creative and actually doing that work and actually living that out. And so I got hired, and I've been working now for a year and a half, and it's gone past behind the scenes. It's I get to work weekly with the Kendricks. I've even traveled to their headquarters and got to work with them, and we put out about 20 videos a month on Facebook and social media, and so it's just been this amazing training ground of being able to learn from them and see how they make decisions, and kind of being that fly on the wall in a lot of situations. And so I just want to ask you guys, if whatever you guys do, if God took away your sight, if God took away your hands, if God took away your voice, could you still fulfill your purpose? You bet you can. So don't get wrapped up in what you do, because it's not who you are. Get wrapped up in Christ, because that is what he created you to do, is to glorify him. But while you're here, use your creative skills and your abilities for the Lord's work, but make sure that you're following what he wants you to do. Because if he's your audience, then he'll make that successful. And again, just in summary about answered prayers, I'm hopefully that you guys who are maybe struggling with your creativity, just what worked for me is before every effort, make sure you pray. And then over every prayer, Lord, your will be done. And then remember that specific prayers get specific answers. And that was the first time in my life that I had really prayed specific prayers, and I was seeking specific answers. And I put myself in the way of answering those prayers, and I prepared for rain. And the amazing thing is the last day that I had work was on a Friday, and they hired me for the movie that following Monday. And I've had a job with them ever since. And so, yeah, that was my answered prayer. So that's it. Thank you.